Listen, there's very few pieces of art and movies in general that I will rally for and defend, because usually I just let people do their own thing. Your opinion is your own, I don't need to worry about it. Lately though, with Poor Things ending its theatre run and also getting released on streaming, I've seen a landslide of absolutely weird takes that just make my blood boil. So let's talk about it.
This is Bella. Bella, this is Mr. McCandles.
Hello, Bella.
In case you haven't heard, Poor Things is a movie by a Greek director, Yorgos Lanthimos, that follows the life of Bella Baxter, a young woman who we later find out came to exist through a weird science experiment. And first we follow her as she learns how to do the simple things: talk, operate her body, interact with others, just the basics. She later goes on to have adventures with her lover in foreign lands, learning about life and society. Just, there's a lot of things happening. Watch the movie, it's great. Sounds like fun little film, right? Well, wrong. Let's talk about the criticism.
She's an experiment.
Good evening.
Her brain and her body are not quite synchronized. But she's progressing at an accelerated pace.
Disclaimer. This movie is based on a book that I haven't read, and apparently it deals with some topics quite differently from the film, so in this video we'll just focus on the adaptation. The main criticism in regards to the movie seems to be its most shocking premise. Bella is actually not a normal woman. Her body is that of a lady who jumped off of a bridge whilst being pregnant. A surgeon named Godwin Baxter finds her body and decides that he's basically just gonna play God and transplant that baby's brain into the adult body. And this enrages some people, given how explicit and intense the nudity is in this movie. Only, hear me out, she's not really a baby. Sure, we can have the argument of we literally see her learning how to walk, how to talk, how her body functions. She's a child. But at the same time, it's quite obvious that we are dealing with a metaphor. Having Bella be taken out of the context of the normal childhood, puberty, adulthood pipeline is a device, a tool, so that we can have almost this control subject. Here it is, a person without the societal bias that every one of us has. And the purpose of the narration is clear when we see how Bella interacts with people around her. It's not that her brain is technically that of a baby, it's that she doesn't have the same conditioning that other people do, which I'll address later in this video. Also, apart from the very first part of the movie, we never see Bella act like somebody who doesn't have control over her own body and desires. Sure, she's not very knowledgeable about the world and she's a bit too trusting, but she's also very clear in what she wants and enjoys. She's also, hear me out, she's also made up. We can't analyze her behavior as we would with any normal person, because she, with her transplanted brain and adult body, does not exist.
Oh.
This is a very interesting point to be made about a movie full of animal hybrids and acid-induced imagery, and I don't know, it just feels very human of us to fixate on the one thing we deem too taboo. Don't get me wrong, the bedroom scenes are pretty explicit and consistent throughout the movie, but they never seem pointless. We first breach the subject with Bella exploring her own body, only then to be cranked up to the max as she leaves her home with Mark Ruffalo. I'm so sorry, I forgot his character's name. And yes, it is something we're not used to seeing on screen. Bella treats her sexuality as something natural, something she enjoys and is not afraid to talk about, in public as well. This is one thing that seems to disappear with the lack of conditioning that I mentioned earlier in the video. She doesn't know or care that polite society usually ignores that topic. It's not so much rebellion against etiquette as it's complete rejection of it. And we, as viewers, also living in society, will probably react with shock. That's the source of our surprise and bewilderment. We are confronted with someone who challenges the standard in the movie world, but also our world. We're not immune to feeling this way, even if we're just innocent bystanders and moviegoers. An extra point that my friend brought up while discussing the movie is that Bella is not only liberated when it comes to her body and intimacy, but also her just overall behavior. Most comments I read about poor things fixate on nudity, but she also danced weird, wanted to punch a baby, shamelessly stared at a couple having an argument, and just ate so many pastries that she threw up in public and walked off as if nothing happened. She was literally doing outrageous stuff throughout the whole movie, and I think we need to give her credit for that.
I am Bella Baxter, and there is a world to enjoy, circumnavigate. It is the goal of all to progress, grow.
Okay, this one gives me pause because I wasn't sure how somebody in goodwill can make that comment after watching the movie. But for those of you who are not aware, towards the end of the movie, Bella gets stuck in Paris without any money, a hysterical lover by her side, and she finds herself a gig in a brothel. She is not too fazed by it, honestly. At first, it's more of a surprise that somebody will pay her to sleep with her, and then it becomes more of a case study or a chore. But at no point is she sad to be making a living this way. And once again, people seem to be incapable of removing our real world bias from the clearly fantastical world. I found a comment saying, "It's sad that all that awaits a woman at the end of her emancipation is working as a prostitute." But there's no emancipation the way we know it. Bella doesn't need to free herself in her mind because she always just is Bella, doing what she wants and what she enjoys. But of course, there's nearly no correlation to our world, don't get me wrong. But in this surreal setup, for once, our normal just doesn't matter. Sure, the story would look 100% different if it was realistic, but it isn't. Especially in relation to Bella's relationships with different men in her life. We can see clearly the reflection of our world just getting shattered when confronted with a creature so clearly and vastly different from the way women are allowed to exist. And again, isn't it just so human that when faced with something breaking the norm, we kind of complain and we want our norm back? Just, don't break the norm. At the end of the day, however free Bella is from her normal conditioning, she's not free of everything. She was brought back to life by Goodwin Baxter. She is continuously being steered in the right direction by men in her life, or people in her life, her lover, her friends, people who just want to show her the real world, and even her boss in the brothel. You name it. And although given a good, almost fairy tale ending, this is not something that should be disregarded in her story. But she's not the only one affected by others heavily. We have Godwin dropping the most horrendous lore like it's silly, goofy jokes. We have Bella's lover and her fiance just crumbling under the weight of expectations they put on themselves. Ruffalo's Duncan just being madly in love with her despite warning her off of falling in love with him in the first place. And then Max, her fiance, just being torn between being supportive and compassionate partner and being blinded by jealousy, essentially. And finally, in I think the most heartbreaking turn of events, we have Felicity, aka Bella 2.0, who was just literally a stand-in for a failed experiment that got away. Who in this scenario is the poor thing? Or aren't we all? Thank you so much for tuning in. Feel free to like or subscribe. There's probably more movie content coming your way. And let me know in the comments about your Poor Things takes. See ya!